Yeah. So how is everybody doing this evening?
Good.
Good. It's a nice day, Saturday. When I moved to California first from Florida, which is where I moved from, I was this place has the best weather in the world, right? Even when it is cold, it's not too cold. It's pretty amazing, and I love it. And I'm from Ghana originally, where it's always warm. It's always like 85 degrees and above. Actually, we don't even speak in terms of degrees, we speak in terms of degrees Celsius. Do you guys use degrees Celsius in China? Like 35 degrees Celsius. So I came and I was like, what is 70 degrees Fahrenheit? I don't know. That's too hot, right? But it's not the same as Celsius, so it was cool. So anyway, my name is Mahama. I am originally from Ghana. I'm an engineer. I do mostly work around water for the people of actually San Jose, Cupertino, Saratoga, and some of the surrounding cities. We help provide clean water. So that's what I do as my day job. My evening job, I work with Springlight, with Sherry and Hongo. I tutor in math. And also, I'm trained in something called mental emotional release, which basically deals with how to help people get rid of emotional challenges and emotional baggage. Okay. So today we're going to speak about something I call emotional intelligence, increase your emotional intelligence, transform your life. The reason this is important is that, for me personally, I've gone through a lot of emotional turmoil in my life. I lost my dad 2 months ago, and that was hard for me. I got divorced in 2016, and that was very hard as well. It was one of the most challenging times of my life, where you're with somebody and then one day they're not with you anymore. So the story is this: I had gone to visit Africa, and when I came back, I used to live in Palo Alto with her. I arrived in the house and she had moved out. There was nobody at home. So you travel and you come back and there's nobody. And my emotions were all over the place. It was really painful. And this thing came actually to full for when I traveled for a conference as part of my work. I was in Portland at the time. And one night I went out at night and I was so sad. I felt so bad. I was crying. It's like, why is this thing following me from the Bay Area all the way to Portland, right? Why is it choosing this moment where I'm supposed to be with people and be happy to make me feel so sad? So I figured there was something kind of off in my life and I needed to deal better with my emotions. So I'm doing this mostly to help myself and mostly to also be able to share the lessons that I know with other people. So I've taken a lot of training in that. I've taken this thing called NLP, which is Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It's basically the language of the mind and the heart. Like, how are you able to connect more with yourself, both emotionally and spiritually and mentally, so that you can have a more interesting life. Okay? So that is where I come from. It's going to be a quick discussion, and I want it to be as informal as possible. So if you have any questions, please ask. And I'm sure there are things you know that I don't know. So do not see me as an expert, right? I want you to see me as somebody who has some information to share that we can exchange ideas today. Is that okay? You can ask the question in between, you can ask the question at the end, and hopefully together at the end of today, we'll have more information to be able to deal with that neighbor who always is loud and I can't stand them, right? Or that child who would not do whatever I ask them to do. Or are you in high school? Yeah, you have friends who are always like getting on your nerves, right? Wouldn't you want to know how to deal with them in a more proactive and positive way? So these are some of the skills that we're going to begin to learn. And like most things, today is the first step in the journey. There's a famous Chinese proverb that says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, right? So let's see this as the first step that you take in the journey of emotional intelligence. There are going to be many more steps. Usually the first step is the most difficult. So here's what I have for us today. Alright, so I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself, which I have done. And then I'm going to go in this order, ask me any question you may have. If I don't know, I hope it's honest of me to just tell you I don't know the answer. or that we can talk about it at a different point, or I can email you about it. Okay? I would like us to talk about what in recent science they call the two minds, the emotional mind and the rational mind. Okay? So that's a model that we will talk about. And then the basic question is, what are emotions? We all feel them, but what are they? Wouldn't it be so much easier if we didn't have emotions, right? That's not true, actually. What are the uses of emotions? Why do we have emotions and how do they work? And I also wanted to talk a little bit more in the fifth one on the latest scientific research on the impact of emotions. How do emotions affect your health, right? How do they affect your relationships? How do they affect the way you communicate with your husband, your child, your friend? There's some research around that. And then this whole thing about emotional intelligence, what is it? Okay? How do you increase it if that's what you want to do? And I thought it's important to look at this whole concept. There's a new concept called non-violent communication that basically teaches people how do you communicate your true needs to people. Right? So for example, if I came and I said to Desi, you're always making me upset. So what am I doing here? I am saying that she is responsible for my upset. So that is violent communication because I am putting my blame on her, right? I need to realize that I can communicate the same need by something else that doesn't make her feel bad. So instead of telling her that you're making me upset, I could say something like this. When you failed to put the book back in the drawer, so that is true, right? She failed to put the book back in the drawer. So that's what happened. It made me feel upset. So I am communicating my need that something made me angry to her, right? So that's the second step of conscious communication. And I'll say, because of that, I didn't feel like opening the door to the car for you today. Okay? Because my attention was not, my need for attention was not met. And then I have to then tell her, what is it that I wanted to do instead? I will say, next time would it be okay with you to put the book back in the drawer after you use it? Right? So you see that this is not aggressive. I'm not blaming her for anything. But I'm telling her my need. My need was not met. So that's called non-violent communication or conscious communication. We'll look at some of that. I have a cool exercise on that. And at the end, I want to wrap it up with what I call a summary of EQ. Like, how can you become a more integrated person so that your emotions work for you and not against you? Is that okay? Okay, so let's dive into this. This is some really cool stuff. We're going to start with the science. I'm not a biologist, so if you're a biologist or a medical doctor or psychologist, you know a lot more about this than I do. But I thought this was useful. So this is a representation of the human brain. According to the current science, they believe that the brainstem, which is something just above your spinal cord, has something attached to it called your amygdala. The amygdala in Greek is almond. So it's shaped like an almond. If I may point to it, is that green thing here? Shaped like an almond. Then there's the frontal part of your brain that has the prefrontal lobes and the neocortex. So here's the thing. When you hear something or you see something, it first is registered in your thalamus. So that your thalamus is your sensory perception, right? And then the information goes in two ways. Some of the information goes to the frontal part of your brain called your prefrontal cortex, and some of it goes to the amygdala. For many, many decades, scientists felt that the information first went to your prefrontal cortex. That's your area of logical processing. And then the information that goes to your prefrontal cortex then allows you to make an emotional decision and then you act on it. So the idea was that you got information, somebody said a bad thing about you. It went to your logical processing center and then you decided how you wanted to react emotionally. Then some research that was done not too long ago found out that actually that is not true. What happens is that there are neurons that go from your thalamus straight to the amygdala before they actually get to the neocortex. So what does this mean? I mean, if science makes your mind glaze over stuff, here's the simple thing. You have an emotional reaction to stimuli before a logical reaction. So when something happens, your emotions get the information first. It means the information goes to the amygdala before it goes to the neocortex. So you're going to get upset and say bad things to your friend or your son or your wife before you think about what you're saying. Has that happened to you before? Where you said something and you later on you regretted it?
Always.
Yeah, always. So it happens to me, right? And then you want to get it back. I want to rewind myself 4 steps and change what I just did, right? The reason that happens is because your emotions get the information before your logical center, okay? Yes, the information still goes to your logical centers and comes back to you again. So you have 2 chances to react emotionally to something. The first chance is the instinct that happens right away, right? And the second chance is after you've had time to think about it. Later in the presentation, we're going to look at something called the STOP model. STOP, stop, right? And what that does is that, we are not there yet, but I'll show you what that does. What that does is that if something happens and you slow down and you allow yourself to breathe in and relax, the information would then get the chance to go to your logical processing center and you can have a logical reaction to something, right? But if it happens and you react right away, then that's the emotional reaction and you might regret that. Okay? So the stop model lets you say, okay, this person is acting up right now, but I'm going to take 4 deep breaths. By the time you finish those deep breaths, your logical center would have had the time to process it, right? So one way to stop rash reactions is to slow yourself down, okay? And the science proves that, because the first reaction is emotional. If you slow yourself down, you let your logical processing center get the time to catch up. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So enough about science. I mean, science is to help us explain stuff, but it's not everything. Okay, I haven't put much in these slides. I just want to, let's look at the genesis of the word emotions. Okay, it comes from the Latin word moter. Moter in Latin means to move. So in a sense, emotions stand for an impulse to act, to have an action. That's what an emotion is. And the E usually in Latin means to move away from something. So if you look at the root of the word emotions, it means to move away from something. You're angry and you're taking an action. So that's really what emotions are. Okay? It's an impulse to act, to take an action. Okay? That's what I want to say about that. So, usually at work, more than at home, they say this. They say, when you come to the office, leave your emotions at the door. Have you heard that before? Just work. People just want you to come to work and just be a completely rational human being. Do you think that's possible? It's not possible to leave your emotions at the door, because that's just not how human beings work, right? You keep your emotions with you even if someone says you should leave them at the door. So let's imagine for a moment a world without emotions. So imagine that all you are is a rational human being and you don't have any emotions. In fact, there have been studies of people who have some damage to parts of their amygdala neocortex connection, and those people show no emotion. They are never happy or sad. And the challenge is that they find it very difficult to make decisions, because everything is the same, blue or black. So for you, if you have a preference for blue, you have an emotional connection for blue. When you go to that Costco and you see the blue speaker, you buy blue because you love blue, right? That's an emotional reaction. Somebody whose emotions are damaged in that regard will spend 2 hours deciding between blue and black. They look at all the logical reasons for blue and black, because there is no feeling there, right? So a world without emotion would be, you get up one day like, should I go to work today? Should I not go to work today? Should I love my wife today? Should I not love my wife today? So emotions are not our enemy, right? Without emotions, nothing would get done. So yes, it's a double-edged sword. Emotions can help you or they can work against you. So even though I say imagine a world without emotions, we do not want to have a world without emotions. Nothing would happen when there are no emotions in the world. Okay? So when you are having that really difficult conversation with your son or daughter or wife or friend, do not wish that you didn't have any emotions, because other than that, you won't even talk to them about anything. Anyway, so we don't want a world without emotions, but what are the uses of emotions? Okay. So here what I wanted to talk about a little bit was, imagine yourself for a moment, just bring to your mind a situation in which you've been angry. I don't want to make you angry, okay? I'm just saying, imagine for a second a time in your life where you've been angry. So what is really going on when you're angry is that blood flows to what they call your extremities, your hands, and it gives you the power to strike somebody. So imagine a caveman 500 years ago, right? They're angry with something, their system allows the blood to go to areas where they can fight, right? That's why when you're angry, sometimes you want to hit somebody. Do you have a question?
Yeah. So the last step was about why we need emotions. Can you talk about why we need negative emotions?
Why we need negative emotions?
Yeah, like why is it helpful in your life?
Okay. If I don't answer that question by the end of the talk, ask me again. Because we're going to talk about some of those things, right? So negative is relative. Okay. So when I say the uses of anger, would you consider anger a negative emotion?
Yeah.
So you are right and wrong at the same time. Because if you have to fight someone and you don't get the blood flowing to your hands, you won't be a good fighter at all. So actually, if you need to defend yourself, you need to be a little bit angry as well, because that's where the energy goes into your hands and you can fight. Now let's look at the different fear. Will you consider fear a negative emotion?
No.
Okay. So fear can be positive or negative. It depends on if it overwhelms you or not. So what happens when you are afraid is that the blood flows into your legs and you can run away. So if something is around that scares you, your body's reaction is to have the blood flow to your legs. So if you have to flee, you can flee. So our ancestors, when they were lions and tigers and other weird creatures in the environment, fear was a very useful response, wasn't it? Because when they were afraid, their body knew what to do, so they could run away. But today, when you are afraid, you don't have to run away from anything. But the same reaction happens, right? The system of your body reacts exactly the same way. And what happens when blood flows to your legs instead of your brain? You're not really thinking straight, right? So we have a system in our body that is almost designed to do things that may not be necessary today. How many times have you had to run away from anything? Maybe in Hawaii, when the lava was spewing from the volcanoes, you had to run away, right? So imagine you don't have any fear, then nothing is going to happen. You're in between, right? And sometimes, are you in school? Are you in school right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're afraid of failing your exam, it may make you study, right?
Sometimes.
Oh, really? So I don't know about you, but for me, one of the things that helped me to do well in school was I was afraid that my dad would come and open the grades and say, why did you get a C in physics? The fear made me study, right? So it depends. People react differently. I remember one time, this is a side story. My dad came to my school. I was in boarding school in high school, and I had all A's, but I had a C in physics. And all he wanted to talk about, why do you have a C in physics? And I go, Dad, how about all these other ones? Right? So that does happen sometimes. So your emotions are neither positive nor negative. It depends on the context and how you use them. Okay? So that's what I mean by. So let's look at an emotion. Say sadness. Is sadness a good emotion or a bad emotion? Exactly. It depends. So let's look at sadness. I lost my dad a few months ago. What sadness lets you do is it lets you become more reflective and you can think more, you can mourn, right? It slows down your energy and your enthusiasm so that you can actually miss the person that you've lost a little bit more, or think more deeply about something you need to think about. So you lose a loved one or something bad happens in your life. So sadness in that sense can be good, but to an extreme, sadness can be bad. You can become so sad you get depressed. And when you get depressed, you have zero energy to do anything. So everything in the right proportion may be okay, right? Okay, so emotions have their uses. Oh, I usually say this because sometimes people ask, which one is more important, your rational mind or your emotional mind? So your rational mind really would deal with IQ, which is intelligence quotient, and your emotional intelligence is EQ. They could say EI, but they say EQ, right? So IQ is your intelligence quotient. So this is research that has been done in many instances, and they say that for your overall success in life, IQ contributes only 20%. So your natural intelligence contributes only 20% of your potential for success in life. Emotional intelligence and some other factors are responsible for the rest of the 80%. So when your kids, yeah, go ahead.
Where's the source of that data?
Dan Goleman, where's my bag? Dan Goleman, emotional intelligence. I would share a lot of the research that I've done with you guys, but I think I should just even bring out the books that I tend to use for these things. Alright, so one of the key books that I use is this book. Dan Goleman, Emotional Intelligence, okay? And then I have another one that just fell off that I use. You can look at them later. Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And then there's this thing called Mental Emotional Release. That's the one that I'm certified in. And there's this thing called Healing Your Heart. When you have a lot of emotional pain in your life, how do you get rid of that? Then this is also interesting. Highly sensitive person. It's about people who are very emotional and how to see that not as a disadvantage. Because being very emotional can help you in some cases and not help you in other cases, right? So I can share some of that research with you, okay? There are other books that I use, but these are the ones that I've used the most recently. So, what do they teach in school? They teach you to be more adept at doing trig and math and all of that. That's all in the IQ stuff. Nobody really teaches you how to be emotionally intelligent at school, which is a shame. There are a few schools that are beginning to evolve where they have an emotional intelligence curriculum. So I think our schools somehow are missing the boat by just focusing on grades and how well you do. Because that alone is not enough. In fact, there's a story told in the book Emotional Intelligence by Dan Goleman. A student who had perfect SAT scores, 800, right? And took 10 years to graduate from college. So, I mean, academically the student is a genius, but took 10 years to graduate from college. Because they couldn't manage their emotions. They were always stressed out, they would sleep till 12 noon and not go to class, and still were really good. So, the challenge there was the emotion and not the academic ability, right? So, for parents in the room, I would say it's important to check how well your kids are doing emotionally, right? Other than that, you are helping them get good grades, but they may not become as successful as you wish them to be because they are not handling it. In fact, one of the things I want to talk about is the next topic is the scientific research of the impact of emotions. There's a famous study conducted by a gentleman called Walter Mischel in the 1960s, a Stanford psychology PhD. It's called the marshmallow test. Yeah, it's a very interesting research. And basically they had these 4-year-olds in an experimental situation in a lab. And this is the setup of the experiment. You would get one marshmallow right away, or if you wait 20 minutes later, you will get 2. So you see the setup? Mm-hmm. So they are marshmallows. Kids like marshmallows. I love marshmallows. Just when you go around the campfire and you put them with chocolate on a stick and you put them in the fire, oh, that's the best thing ever, right? Anyway, so they do this marshmallow test, and the kids who wait for 20 minutes to get 2 marshmallows, and the kids who don't, and they track their lives through high school and college and life. And the results are fascinating. The first result is that on the SAT test, if you take the verbal and the quantitative together, the kids who were able to wait longer, this is a test of resilience, had a 210-point higher SAT than the kids who were not able to wait. And these were kids who were tested at 4 years old, and they were tracked in life for a long time. This is crazy, isn't it? That a kid's ability to delay gratification or to wait when they are 4 years old can predict how they will do in life. In fact, in psychology, there's this thing called the imprinting period between 0 and 7. What happens to a child between 0 and 7 is the most important thing that could happen to them. That's when most of their emotional life is built. You can change after 0 to 7, but unless you consciously change the things you learned and unlearn them later in your life, what happens in that period is going to impact you the rest of your life. That's why these studies happen like that. So that's just the marshmallow test. Then they also did it. This one is for academic excellence. There's another study that was done for 752 men in Sweden. These were people born around 1933. And this one is for health. So the study, it goes like this. They track them to see, after some number of years, how many of them are alive and how many of them die. In this particular study, about 40 of these people died after some time. And what they found out was that those who had high stress in their life were 2 times more likely to die than those whose lives were calm. So people around the same age, double-blind study, random testing, right? So if you had more stress in your life, you were 2 times more likely to die than somebody who had less stress in their life. Then they did another test at Stanford of people who had high blood pressure and had a first heart attack. Okay? And they found out that, especially for the men, it's the men who have this problem, anger. Men who had anger issues were more than 1.5 times more likely to die than men who did not. The problem for women in that study was anxiety. The women who had more anxiety were less likely to survive after a period of time than those, the women who had less anxiety survived for 3 years longer than women who had more anxiety. In a study where you just randomize everything. So the impact of anger and anxiety all have profound effects on our health. Right? There's another book that I didn't bring, it's called The Biology of Belief. It's one of the most revolutionary books about how what you think and believe affects your cells. So the thesis of the book is that your thoughts affect how many times you get sick, how many times you go to the hospital, how long it takes you to recover from conditions. In fact, there's this really interesting research. They expose normal people to the cold virus, common cold. And those who have a lot of stress in their lives are 50% likely to catch the cold after the exposure to the virus. And those whose lives are more than normal have only about a 27% chance of catching the cold. Isn't that interesting? Just take a random population of people, expose them to the cold virus, and the amount of stress you have in your life can determine if you catch the cold or not. And in this same study, they did it for marital couples. Couples who were having fights or whose relationship was kind of on the rocks were more likely to catch the cold than couples who had a more serene relationship. So your emotional state has a huge impact on your health, okay? On the quality of joy that you have in your life. That's why emotions are so important. Any questions up to this point? Okay. If you have a story to share on this as well, you could. Alright, I thought I've been saying a lot about emotional intelligence. I might as well just say, what do the books say about emotional intelligence, right? I'm not going to read this, but basically there are 4 or 5 categories of emotional intelligence depending on what books you read. Okay, the first one is self-awareness, self-knowledge. How well do you know yourself? And when you are getting angry, can you tell from the beginning that you're getting angry? Or when you're getting sad, can you tell? So are you conscious of the emotions that are flowing through you? That's self-knowledge or self-awareness. Then there's self-management, because knowing that you are becoming upset by itself is not enough, right? What do you do with that? That is called self-management. And there are techniques to deal with that. Then there's the other one is social awareness. So if you're in a group like this, do you know what to say and what not to say? Do you know how to deal with people and how not to deal with people, right? Is it okay to be chewing gum really loudly and making noise? I mean, who knows? Is it even okay to wear red shoes to a group like this, right? So, the social awareness, right? And then there's also social management. Now that you are aware of what's acceptable socially, do you know how to actually make it in such a way that you have better relationships with people? It's not so easy. So that's where most books end. Those are the 4 things. We call them personal competence and social competence. Personal competence is about you. Do you know your emotions? Do you see them when they're happening to you? Do you know how to deal with them? And social competence is how you deal with other people. Then some books have something else called motivation, which I actually like it. What are your motivation strategies? How do you do things that you like to do? Anybody can do things that they like to do. The motivation is more natural. But how do you do things that you don't like to do? Or today I don't want to drive my kids to school. Yeah? I don't want to. Why do I have to sign another check, right? So there are motivation strategies, and they also have to do with your emotional competence or your emotional intelligence. So that's what I'll say up to this point. So that's what you see here. Self-awareness, self-management, or self-regulation, social skills, empathy, and motivation. Okay. Now this concept of empathy, we can talk about that for hours. So there's scientific studies that show that when something happens to someone that you care about, okay, actually the part of your brain that fires is the same as the part of the brain that fires in the person. So let's say somebody falls down and breaks their leg. I hope it doesn't happen to you or someone you know, right? The pain that they feel, the part of their brain that is lit up, if you have empathy for the person, is the same part of your brain that's going to be lit up. Those are called mirror neurons, like a mirror neurons. So to feel empathy for somebody is to feel exactly how they feel, even though the same thing has not happened to you. So empathy is a very important thing, as compared to sympathy. Okay, you feel bad, I know you feel bad, but I don't really feel it, right? So the ability to empathize with people is to be able to put yourself in their shoes. And once you do that, you can actually communicate with them much better. You can understand them, you can love them, you can care for them, right? That's why it's dangerous to say, when someone comes and they're complaining to you about how miserable their life is, you don't want to say, I understand, because maybe you don't, right? You can say, I hear you, right? I see where you're coming from, but it's not a good thing to say I understand, because you don't. You don't, unless you genuinely feel what you're feeling, you don't want to say I understand. Right? There are strategies on how to deal with things. When somebody comes to talk to you, for example, this is a side issue about something. There are 2 things you can have. This is called conversational intelligence. It's different from emotional intelligence. But conversational intelligence would be, are you going to support what they say, or are you going to talk about yourself? So we have what we call a support response and a switch response. You come and tell me how terrible your day was. A support response would be, wow, tell me what really happened. I care about what you're saying. A switch response would be like, yeah, yesterday I had a really miserable day myself, and then I start talking about what I'm doing, right? So that's a switch response. I'm talking about me, when really what you need is someone to listen to. So these are things that also have to do with empathy and conversational intelligence. Okay, so we've talked about these things already: self-awareness, self-mastery, social awareness, relationship mastery, and motivation. Those are the basics of emotional intelligence, at least as far as we know today. No, you never have to feel like this is the end of everything. This is just somebody's model. Right? There's more to it than we see, but it helps. Okay, so I put these slides together because I wanted to say, so we've talked about emotions. Hopefully by now you see that emotions affect your relationship, they affect your health, they can help you or they can work against you. How do you increase your emotional intelligence, right? So this is just the first thing, self-awareness. I'm not going to read them, but the key thing here to realize is that your emotions are pieces of information. They are not good or bad. So when I feel sad, self-awareness will be like, okay, what is making me feel sad? It is trying to give me a point of information, right? So I don't want to let the sadness make me freeze. So don't think of your emotions as good or bad. Look at them as your body is trying to tell you something. Okay? This one is controversial. Letting yourself feel the emotion. Isn't it natural, at least in my case, that when an emotion like fear springs up, you want to distract yourself and cover it right away? The experts say actually that you should let yourself feel the emotion. Don't run away from it. Lean into the emotion. It's trying to tell you something. Like, do not be afraid of the fear you feel. Somebody called it double jeopardy. Like, you are afraid and you are afraid that you are afraid. So that's like double layers of fear, right? Or you are angry and you become angry that you're angry. Right? That is some messed up stuff, right? So the thing you want to do is let yourself feel the emotion. Don't run away from it. Your emotions are not working against you, they're telling you something, right? So sometimes I go into a place and all of a sudden I feel very uncomfortable. I feel something inside me. If I'm very aware, I can see that maybe there's something in that environment that I should not be doing, right? Then I can step away from it. So see your emotion, most importantly, as a point of information. And the idea with self-awareness is be conscious. Also, almost be like, you see, this is me, Mahama. I want to float above myself and be observing myself as a neutral observer. So imagine that this is me, I'm the one doing this. Like I'm saying hi to the lovely Desi right here. And then I am up above myself, looking at myself, saying hi to her, right? So that's the awareness. But how do I feel as I say hi to her? Like I have good feelings towards her, I'm aware of that. But if I were angry, I want to know that I'm angry. So that's the self-awareness part. Know how you feel. The earlier you know how you feel, the better. That's the key. Then self-management. Now that you know how you feel, what do you do about it? Or what can you do about it? Okay? There's some strategies around that. It turns out that your breathing is really important. Okay? So I'm going to have you do a quick exercise. It's completely optional. You can do it, you cannot. I want to teach you a technique called the 7-11 technique. There are different techniques for breathing, but I'm using 7-11 because you remember, right? There are stores called 7-11. So what we're going to do, and it's not a spiritual exercise, it's a breathing exercise. You are going to breathe in and count 7 and hold it for like 4. You're going to breathe out 11 and hold it for like 4 and breathe in again. We're going to do it just twice. So you can count for yourself. You count to 7, but you breathe. And you hold it, right? And then you breathe in again for 7. Okay, so this is what you want to do when you're upset, before you decide to do anything else. Okay? Do it 4 times. Maybe 5 if you're really angry, right? So from the science that we talked about, why you do this is so that you can allow the information to go through your logical processing centers and you can get a more reasoned response. Okay? So breathing is a really good way to do that. So it's the same thing. Second thing says slow yourself down. Like, don't rush. This is an important thing. Take control of your self-talk. Emotions is not just about how you relate to other people, it's how you talk to yourself. So don't do this, but let me give you an example to illustrate the point. You got your grade and you got a B minus. Oh God, I suck again. My God, I'm so miserable. I'll never get an A in this class. Oh man, what is my mom going to do to me? What's my dad going to do to me? I'm such a failure. I'm so miserable. Oh God, what am I going to do? This is an example of negative self-talk. Okay? So you want to be really careful with that. So who you are today, the 4th of August 2018, is as a result of many thoughts over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Your thoughts literally created you. Okay? And who you will be tomorrow will be because of the thoughts you're having today. So your thoughts, in fact, there's a saying in the Bible, I believe it's Proverbs 27:3, that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So your thoughts become you. That's why you don't want negative self-talk. It's almost better, I'm not saying you should lie to yourself, but it's almost better to lie to yourself in a positive way. One of my favorite sayings is by Fyodor Dostoevsky, a famous Russian writer and philosopher, who says that lying to ourselves is much easier than lying to other people. In fact, we lie to ourselves a lot. If that is true, then I would say, for you to lie to yourself in a positive way. Tell yourself you're a good person. Tell yourself you're great. Okay? It's better than telling yourself that you suck. So self-talk is really important. Okay? So let's say the right thing. There's another Bible verse that I like. I believe it's Romans 12:2. It says that transform yourself by renewing your mind. Okay? So transform yourself by what? Renewing your mind. So in fact, to get to the next level that you want to get to in your life, you would have to change the way you think. Okay? You have to have more positive thoughts about yourself. You have to believe things that are different from what you currently believe in today. Otherwise, like Einstein said, madness is doing the thing you did yesterday that gave you the bad result over and over again, right? Madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting to get a different result. So if all the time you're arguing with your friend or your spouse or your child and you haven't changed anything, tomorrow you're still going to have the same problem, right? So the way to get into the future you deserve or desire is to renew your thinking, is to renew your mind. Okay? See things differently. So someone said once, one of my favorite sayings is this, that most people, what they need is not to visit more countries. You know how all the time you're like, I want to go to the Taj Mahal, I want to go to Mountain Kilimanjaro, Mount Everest. You want to see more things, right? This philosopher says, what you really need in your life is new eyes. So you don't need to see new things, you need new eyes. New eyes to see the same things that you see, to see them differently. Your friend that is always driving you crazy, tomorrow see them differently, right? The mountains in Saratoga or in Big Sur, see them differently. You don't have to go to Peru to see the mountains in Peru. You can see them here in California, right? So if you go out, what we really need is new eyes and not new adventures. So see the same thing you do today differently. Your life will be different. There's another thing, gratitude. How many times haven't we wanted more? It's called the hamster wheel of life. You have this, but you want that, and you want that, and you want that. So think about the thing that you wanted 5 years ago. Did you get it? Did it give you the feeling that you thought it would give you when you were seeking that thing? Right? So, me, I love going to school, like a perpetual student. I've gone to a lot of school in my life. And then when I was in Ghana, I was like, oh, I want to go to Georgia Tech. If I go to Georgia Tech, my life would be perfect. I would have no problems in my life. And then I go to Georgia Tech, right? And then after we finish, I'm like, is that it? Really? Okay. And I'm like, man, I want to marry a beautiful woman. My life would be so happy when I do that. And then I did, and it didn't work out, right? Then I was like, I want to go to an Ivy League school. Man, wouldn't it be great to go to Columbia and live in New York City and go to Broadway and see some of the best shows in the world, right? And I went to Columbia and then I finished, I'm like, is that all? So, things that you seek, when you get them, they don't even give you the same level of happiness, right? However, if you practice gratitude, if you're grateful for the little that you have, your life is going to be so much richer. The small things. Somebody smiled to you. Your child did their homework today, right? These are the joys of life. These are the things that really matter. Do you see where I'm going with that? So practicing gratitude makes a difference in our lives. It's not about getting more. It's about appreciating and loving what you already have. There's a book that I love by an author called Brené Brown. It's called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. The top 5. And this woman, she's a nurse who worked with people who were about to die. She worked with more than 70,000 people on their deathbed. Like in a nursing home. And then after all that experience, she wrote a book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. One of them is that I wish I hadn't worked so hard. It's one of the things that people talk about, the top 5. One of the top 5, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Then the other one is, I wish I had told people I love that I love them. Right? Like, think about that. I wish I had told people that I love them. So, everything that we do gives us a sense of accomplishment. But the research is that when people are about to die, they don't worry about what they've accomplished, they worry about the basic human necessities. Things like, does my family love me? Right? Did I tell my child or my daughter or my friends that I love them? That's where gratitude comes in. Social awareness. I'm going to train the elephant. You know, there's this saying, that the elephant in the room, right? Things that you can't say. It's not so easy to be socially aware. We can give a whole class on how to have social intelligence, how to deal with people, how to know how to walk into a conversation and how to get out of a conversation. Are you pleasing people? Are you making an impression? In fact, the way we've been taught to relate socially is the wrong thing. It's upside down. Okay? If you want to have a beautiful social interaction with someone or with a group, you need to go there knowing what or who you are. Impressing people doesn't make a difference in your life. Pleasing people does not. So your aim is not to impress people. Your aim is to be present with them. Okay? Be present. Just be yourself. You have a gift that only you, of all the people in the world, can share with the world. So be present. You don't have to impress them and let them have a good opinion of you. In fact, the problem is that, how do I even know that I'm impressing you? Because maybe I'm not, right? So why even worry about what somebody would think about you? Just be you. Have the genuine gift that is inside you, and that's what you have to share with the world. So that's the first rule in my mind about social intelligence, is be present with your gift and who you are. Right? I mean, there are things around watching body language, that's fine. You don't want to go into a group and you're like this. People are like, what's wrong with this guy, right? I mean, you want to be strong. There's one of the books that I like is by a guy called Jordan Peterson, and he calls it the 12 Rules of Life. And he gives an example in the beginning of the book about lobsters. Lobsters, when they want to show that they are the alpha lobster, they rise up and they have a strong posture, right? So body language is important. You don't want to do that, okay? And there are things around. If I came to talk to you, for example, and then I come, my head is drooping, and then my hands are here. It tells you, my head is drooping, tells you that I'm sad. My hand is here. Either I'm cold, it's possible that I'm cold, or I'm protecting my gut. In fact, this thing is a protection device. It can also be cold, it can mean many things, right? So if a speaker comes to speak to you and they're like this, It could mean that they don't trust you or they're insecure and they're protecting their sensitive organs from being attacked. So you have to be careful about body language. So is that your daughter?
Yeah.
Can I make an observation? You guys are doing something we call matching. Have you seen that your left leg is crossed over your right and her left leg is crossed over your right? So it means you guys are in good rapport. So you have a good relationship.
Yeah.
That's how you can tell about body language. And your hands are crossed. But you see, your right hand is on your left and her left is on her right. This is called mirroring. So you are matching with your feet, but you're mirroring with your hands. Mirroring is a good thing as well. It shows that you are in rapport. So one way to get into rapport with people as well is to say, like if I come to Desi, for example, and I don't know her well, but I want to get into rapport with her, I'm not going to make it obvious, but I'm going to sit next to her. I know she's crossed her leg. I don't want her to know that I'm doing that. So I'm going to sit for a few seconds, how are you doing? And then over time, I'm going to cross my leg, like this. Okay? Over time, I'm going to do that. And if I don't want it to be too obvious, instead of matching her by doing the same thing, I'll mirror her. So scientific studies have shown that matching and mirroring helps you get into rapport with somebody. Okay? So be conscious of that. When you want to get into a good interaction with somebody, you want to learn the whole issue of body language and how to match and mirror. Okay? And I can tell if people are in rapport just by the way they are relating to each other. So that's how you understand some of these things in terms of social awareness, right? And another thing for your kids in particular is if you want your kids to become really good at social interactions, put them in groups, in teams, maybe robotics challenge, or something where they have to interact with people. That then evolves a natural way of getting to know people and being able to relate in a social context. Alright, so relationship management, how do you relate to people well? The biggest key, like Socrates would say, is be curious. You can't fake it. These things you can't fake. If I'm not interested in you, and I only talk to you because I want something, you would figure it out. So this is my principle. I get to know people before I need anything from them. If I don't want anything from you, that's when I want to know you. So that if I ever need something from you, it's more natural for me to ask you, right? So I'm genuinely concerned about people and interested in what's going on in their lives. So be curious. Don't just go, you come to me today, like somebody who will work for me, you come to me in the office, you don't normally come. You ask me, oh, how was your day, blah, 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 and 5 minutes later you're like, can you sign my forms for me? Huh? You see, that's not natural, right? But if usually you come to me, even though you don't want anything from me, and we talk, and so next time you come and you want me to sign something, it's so much easier for me to sign it. Because I know that you are yourself. You're not coming to me for anything. So it's important that you don't fake these things, that you genuinely care about people. That is the only way you are going to be able to relate with people well. One of my favorite sayings is, there's a verse in the Bible, I believe it's Mark 12:31. It says, love your neighbor as yourself. That's a very difficult thing to do. Even the neighbor who's always loud and obnoxious, the Bible says you should love your neighbor as yourself. And that is hard, right? And just think about it for a minute. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's a tough thing to do. Yeah, that's what we're called to do. Because when you love people, you actually are loving yourself. One of the things that about emotions are like, they say that being angry with somebody, like really angry with them, is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Right? So you're killing yourself, but you think you're killing the other person. That's why being angry at people is very counterproductive. Because you're taking the venom in you and you're thinking, oh, I'm punishing you. No, you're not. You're punishing yourself. So you begin to see how loving other people is in your best interest, right? It helps you emotionally, it helps you in your own life, instead of the opposite. Okay. Then this one, show that you care. That makes sense, right? And for the parents who are in the room, I come from Africa. In Africa, your mom talks to you or your dad talks to you and you listen, you don't ask questions. You listen. So my mom is talking to me. I look her in the eye. She's like, "Why are you looking at me like that?" And then after a while, I'm looking away. She's like, "I'm talking to you. Listen to me." So what am I supposed to do, right? So it's important that even though you're the parent, you acknowledge your child's feelings. Because like I said, the imprinting period is very early. The early stages of your child's life are the most important. You want to acknowledge their feelings. You want to let them know that you care. So that one day when they are in the office, they love themselves. They're not waiting for someone else to love them. Or when they're in a relationship, they're not waiting for their husband or their wife to give them love. Because you gave them all the love they needed when they were kids. You see that people, they become adults and they're emotionally dependent on their husband or wife. Why do you think that is? They didn't feel like their parents loved them, so they walk around looking for someone to love them. I have that problem. I didn't feel like I was loved enough as a kid. So for many years, and I think one of the reasons my marriage did not work was there's just too much of putting your burden for love on the other person. It doesn't work. So you need to step back and see, oh, I probably didn't get as much love as I needed as a kid. That's why I'm looking for love in all these places. Or that's why I'm always drinking, because there's a hole inside of me. It's good to go back and see, why are you doing what you do? Okay? Alright, so this is the positive part of emotions. We've talked about how emotions can hold you back, but sometimes emotions can also help you. In fact, many times. So I like to think about it this way. There's a famous Stanford, I live close to Stanford, so I'm using a lot of Stanford psychology, and there are lots of Stanford psychologists who are well famous. So I like this saying, I'll just read it. It says, people's beliefs about their abilities have a profound effect on those abilities. People who have a sense of self-efficacy bounce back from failures. They approach things in terms of how to handle them rather than worrying about what can go wrong. So what it's saying is, your thoughts and your belief about what you can do impacts your resilience in life. So if you're optimistic, if you have hope, when you write the SAT the first time and you don't get the score you want, you don't just give up. You go and you go again, right? So that's the power of optimism, of hope, of believing in yourself. In fact, there's a verse in Hebrews that I like a lot. It talks about faith as the evidence of things that are not seen yet, right? So you need to have faith and believe that even though the things you want to get haven't happened yet, that they would happen. That's the only way you would spend all those sleepless nights studying. Okay? So somebody said, so Christopher Columbus, if you read his story and think about the number of shipwrecks that they had, the number of diseases that killed people on his crew, and they kept going. Why did they keep going? They had hope that they would discover the Americas. They didn't. They discovered a place they thought was India, but ended up being here, right? But why did they put so much effort and so much energy, and they braved rough winds and disease? So if you have a clear mission or vision, and you have hope or faith, you would struggle through whatever. That's why intelligence is not so important. It doesn't matter how intelligent you are, if you don't have resilience and hope, the first failure you get, you will stop. Edison, in perfecting the light bulb, did more than 9,000 experiments. So imagine after 100 he had stopped. Right? So this is a guy who had a lot of resilience. He had hope. He was motivated. That's why emotions help you to get the things you want, because you fail and then you get up. You fall and then you stand up. Then you keep going. That's how these things work. Okay? And I mean, there's a study on how hope affects SAT scores, for example. In fact, this study by C.R. Snyder was about high school kids with high SAT scores, with high school kids with regular SAT scores. And he found out that in college, the kids who did the best in college were the kids who had hope and were positive-minded, optimistic, not the kids who are the highest SAT scores. So that's pretty powerful. Yes.
How can you tell a child has hope or no hope?
That's a good question, sir. I think you see if they easily give up or not. If you know your child well and you observe that every time they do something and it doesn't work out well, they're too hardened. And it's okay to feel bad when you don't do well. It's natural, right? But when the person doesn't want to try again because they failed, then they don't have as much hope as they could.
For example, if I'm the admission officer,
Yes.
and when I read your essay, how can you tell from the essay this person has great hope?
So I don't have a direct answer to that, but I would imagine that if someone wrote an essay where they tell me how many times they tried to get something done and failed and still did it anyway, I would feel like they have hope. So kids who only write about the positive things in their life, it's fine. But a kid, if I'm reading your essay and you write to me and you tell me, look, I tried this many times, it didn't work, but after trying it 5 more times, it worked. I can see you are resilient.
How about that guy say, I tried 5 times, didn't work, I'm still trying, it hasn't worked. What do you say? Because that's more realistic.
That's a good question. I am not saying that if you try something and it doesn't work, you should keep trying. Because there are times when you need to know how to cut your losses and move on. Some things don't work. There's a famous song by Kenny Rogers about gambling. Yeah? You have to, when you're playing cards, you gotta know when to hold on, when to walk away, and when to run.
Okay? You're still judging people on the result, not on their effort.
It depends. So it has to, the context is important, right? So somebody could try hard and fail, and you judge them on the effort and not the result. Because maybe what they did was not supposed to work. That's what I would say. Okay? And like they say, failure is not final, it's feedback. See failure as what? Feedback. So if somebody is courageous enough to write an essay to me as an admissions officer and tell me how much they've tried and they've failed, I would actually look at them with respect. Because first of all, they're honest. Because usually people just want to put their best foot forward, right? So I would respect that, right? So it depends on I have to read the essay and understand the full context of what they're saying. Because sometimes things just don't work out, and it's okay, right? And it's difficult to know when you should stop and when you should keep going, but you have to know for yourself, right? That I've done all I can and this is not working.
Like Edison did those many times of testing. They're not testing the same material again and again, they change.
He was excellent point, right?
Yeah.
So Einstein said madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So maybe you want to change the approach you're using and you may get a different result. But sometimes you change the approach and you don't even get a different result. And that's when you have to know when to cut your losses and run away. So it's a balance. Okay, so stop. This model is what you use to deal with emotions in the present. I'm really agitated right now. I'm not, but if I were, okay? I don't want to do something and regret it later. So the stop model is like this. S literally stands for stop. Stop whatever you're doing. You're very upset. Stop. T is for take a deep breath. The 7-11 technique that I was telling you about. 1, 2, 3, as many as you need to calm down, right? O is for observe what is going on in the outside environment, but also inside you. That's where the self-awareness we talked about comes in. So observe what is going on. And P is for do something but cautiously, right? Don't rush into action. So that's what happens when you are right away upset and you want to not regret later. Just stop. Literally stop. There's actually a rule in the German army that if you are upset with your colleague or supervisor, don't present the complaint until you've slept over it. They tell you, something happens today, don't complain. Sleep over it. If you wake up and you still feel the same way, go and talk about it. So that's literally using the stock model. So in some cases, you may want to sleep over the issue before you act on it. Okay? That's another way to increase your emotional intelligence. Any question on this, please? Yeah.
Wait, what if someone told you they're about to flip your lid? You ever heard that?
They're about to flip your lid?
Yeah.
I haven't heard it. Tell me about it.
So it's like the hand model of the brain.
Uh-huh.
It's like this is the midline, this is the frontal cortex.
Yeah.
And like if someone about to flip your lid, what should you do?
What should you do? It looks like you've thought about this. What would you do?
I don't know. That's what I asked.
So, can you explain it in lay terms for everybody to understand? Like, can you explain what you mean by flip your lid so that everybody understands it?
Right now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So basically, like in the beginning, you talked about the brain model, and then like the four fingers is like the frontal cortex.
Yeah.
The frontal cortex, and the thumb is the midline. You hold your hands like this, and if you're about to flip your lid, that means you're about to lose reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
If someone tells you to do that, like if someone tells you they're about to flip your lid, like what should you do?
So, did you understand what she's saying? What she's saying is that she's using science to ask a question. If someone tells you they're about to make you really upset, right?
Yeah.
What should you do? Can anybody answer that? What will you do? Someone tells you they're about to make you really upset, and they tell you ahead of time. I'll say, thank you for letting me know, right? This is what I would say. Thank you for letting me know, and I'll ask them, what is it that is making you want to flip my lid? I'll ask them, what is it that makes you want to do that? They may tell you or they may not. And then I would also tell myself, I choose not to allow myself to be flipped. Do you see what I said? I choose not to allow myself because I have free will, right? Nobody can make you angry unless you cooperate with them. Do you see what I'm saying? So if they come and they say, I'm going to make you upset, I'm going to flip your lid, I'd be like, bring it, try. Because in that case, I've put pride around my ability to refuse to be angry. Usually the things that happen to us, we are not victims, we are not helpless. We can choose to react differently, right? Or we can choose to be angry in a positive way. You had a different question, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't think you understand my question.
Okay, go ahead. So explain it in lay terms then. Explain it in more simple language.
Okay, so this is like the stop model. That's what you should do if you are really frustrated, right? But if someone tells you that they're really frustrated, like what should you do for them?
Oh, okay. See, I need to practice more active listening, right? So somebody has an issue and you want to help them.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what I do. And I like to hear myself talk, so I talk a lot. But I've learned one thing. Talking too much doesn't help. So let's say you came to me and you're about to get really upset. I would ask you, how would getting upset meet the need that you have? So let's say you have a need for attention. Human beings have very basic needs. Attention, affection, right? So your need is for love. And your partner, your friend is not giving you love and you're about to really get upset. I'll say, what is it that you really need in this case? And I'm about to give you a model called the model for conscious communication, and that would help. So I'll show you a model that you can share with your friends on how not to flip out and still get what they want met. So here's the deal. Ask yourself, what do I need in this situation? Find a way of getting that need met without flipping out. Is that cool? So this is for you, but let's look at the next thing. That's a good question. Thank you for clarifying. Conscious communication. What happened to my slide? Oh no, I'm missing a slide. Yikes. Okay, alright. Let me see if it's here. I am missing a slide. So there's an exercise, but the exercise had a slide before that. Okay. Alright, let me talk about conscious communication before we talk about the exercise. And that could help answer your question. So the idea of conscious communication is something developed by a guy called Marshall Rosenberg. And his book is entitled Nonviolent Communication. Okay? So, something happens to you or to somebody else, and you want to communicate what you really feel to the person without being aggressive. That is when you use conscious communication. There are 4 steps to conscious communication. The first thing is this. What happened? Okay? So in your case, tell your friend to ask the question, what happened? Without any emotion, right? The fact, you did not brush your teeth this morning. That's a fact. No emotion attached to it. You did not do your homework yesterday. So state the facts as they are. What happened? Then the next thing is, what emotions am I feeling relating to what happened? So when you're communicating in this model of communication, you need to speak about how is what happened making you feel. And you need to be honest about it. So let's say you are the one who didn't put the book back in the drawer. What's your name? I'm sorry?
Lily.
Lily, okay. So, Lily, then I come to you and I say, Lily, yesterday, after you read my book on nonviolent communication, you did not put it back. Is that true? Play along.
Yeah.
So that happened, right? And I will say, it made me feel really upset. I'm communicating my emotion to you. But I'm not blaming you. I'm saying I allowed myself to become upset. Okay? So this is the next step is, how is what happened making me feel? Step number 2. Step number 3 is this. What is it that I want that I am not getting because of what happened? So then I say, your action of not putting the book back in the drawer as expected made me feel not appreciated. So the first thing made me upset, that's the emotion. The second thing is, I have a need for appreciation and your action did not provide that need. See that? Again, not aggressive. Then finally, I say, this is where I say what I want you to do instead of what you did. Okay? So step 1, what happened? Say it without emotion. Step 2, say honestly what the emotion was that you felt because of what happened. Okay? You are acknowledging your emotions. Step 3, say what it is that you would have wanted that is missing from the thing. Maybe attention, appreciation, love, whatever. And step 4, finally say, this is what I would hope you would do instead next time this happens. Okay? So next time, Lily, I would appreciate it if you put the books back after you read them. Do you see the steps I've gone through? So that way you don't flip out. Why people flip out is because they don't feel there's a way for them to express their emotions without getting run over by those emotions, right? So if you want more knowledge on that, I would suggest that on nonviolent communication. Or there's another book called Liminal Thinking by Dave Gray, which is really good as well for that. Okay? So, conscious communication, what happened? How did that make you feel? What is it that you would have wanted to get that you didn't get because of that? And finally, what do I actually want to be done to fix the situation?
Is that much different than I statement?
The I statement? Could you explain?
I state.
How would you say that, the I statement?
I statement is it's not about you, it's about me.
Exactly. So that is the
I statement.
It's exactly the I statement. You've just gone through different states. So first of all, you want to acknowledge what happened. Because sometimes, if you start talking about the emotions without talking about what caused them, the person may be confused, right? So you want to be clear. This is what happened. And everything in the conscious model is the I statement. I got upset. I chose to get upset. I didn't have to be upset, right? I am missing something, the affection or the attention. And this is what I would prefer you do instead. So everything is about I. So it doesn't put the blame on the person. It's just you. So that's a fair point. Okay. So we are almost at the end of this. It's almost an hour and a half since we started. We don't have time to do this exercise, but when you go home, this is the challenge that I give you. Think about something that's happening in your life, an argument, a difficult co-worker, your son, your wife, whoever. Just think about something to do with another person. And I want you to draft a response using the conscious model I just talked about. Identify what happened. Don't put the emotion there yet. Identify, write it down, how that makes your emotions work, anger, whatever the case may be. What is it that the action deprived you of getting? Respect, maybe, or attention. And then write finally, what would you want the person to have done instead? Okay. All right, so this is the last slide that we have, and it's a summary of everything that I've been talking about. I call it integrated EQ, integrated emotional intelligence, right? Here's how you make emotional intelligence a full part of your life. Self-awareness. That's where everything starts. What am I feeling in the moment? Don't deny it, let it be. Okay? Then self-management, the next thing, is letting yourself feel the emotion fully. And I call this compassionate self-inquiry as the next step. So instead of the negative self-talk that I was complaining about, ask genuine questions to get more information. Love yourself even as you talk to yourself. Then there's something from cognitive behavioral therapy, which is one of the ways of psychotherapy, called reframing. How do you take the same thing that has happened to you in the past and look at it differently? It's like seeing with different eyes, right? That's reframing. So take the same thing that has happened to you in the past and look at it with a different lens. Think, maybe I was not at fault fully. Bad things happened, it's in the past. I'm a new person now. That's reframing, right? Or when somebody cuts you off in traffic, instead of flipping the finger at them, you could reframe it and say, maybe they have a sick person in their car and they're driving them to the hospital. It could be a lie, but the reframing helps you not to be angry, right? Not to drink that poison. Basically. And then there's healing deeper wounds. This is more deep. So, yes, you have emotions today that are making you upset, but you also have a history of emotions. How do you get rid of the anger that has built in you all these years? The emotional baggage. Sometimes you need some kind of healing. Right? There are techniques like that. If you are spiritual, going to church is a very important thing to do to help you get rid of the baggage, right? There are techniques called MER, mental emotional release techniques. That's what I'm certified in. And it helps you to go back and deal with the emotional baggage as well. And other techniques like Psych D that exist in the world. Okay. Set goals. So if you get angry 10 times a day, maybe you set a goal of getting angry only 2 times a day. Right? So set goals around emotional intelligence, about how you want to see yourself. And then finally, create a support structure. Deepen the friendships that you have. Deepen your relationship with your children, your wife, your spouse. Because like we saw in the study I gave a study earlier on about how the Swedish men, some lived for a longer period of time and others not. One of the things they also realized was that if you have people that you regularly talk to, that you regularly relate with, it actually increases your lifespan. So it's an important component of emotional intelligence is having a strong support structure. It could be your church, it could be your book club, it could be your friends, your family. Because those who have friends live longer than those who don't. Okay? So that's the last thing I'll leave with you is that find somebody that you love, or love somebody that you know already in a deeper way, because that will help you live longer and them live longer. Okay? So that's the end of my talk. I'm open to any questions that anybody may have. Or any contribution, any experience that you have on these types of topics. Lily, any questions? You seem to know a little bit about brain science.
Yeah.
You took classes on that?
Yeah, I took cognitive